to the Gaming Discourse. I'm Tyler Frater alongside Richard D. the Cruz.
Hello.
And Chief Engineer Lieutenant Commander Connor Frater.
Hello.
It is Monday, January 15th, 2023. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse. Patreon.com/The Gaming Discourse. You can support us for $247, $10. Get your name in the video credits, early access to our videos, access to our Discord server, and more. We're going to be talking a lot about AI today. In fact, that's basically the only thing we're going to be talking about today.
It's the only thing that matters now.
I know, which, man, it makes me so... Okay, you know what? We'll save it for later. We'll save it for later. Let's, okay, but before that, we'll talk about the games. I've been playing a lot of different things. Richard, Connor, you said you haven't been playing anything.
Correct.
Richard, you've said you've played one thing, a little bit, something?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
What is that game?
Oh, what is that game? I don't know.
We're not in the same room, so it's a little weird to.
I don't know anymore. Video games are. I hate video games. So I've been playing a smaller independent game called I believe it's called After Image. But my favorite genre of game, it's a side scroller Metroidvania type game.
Okay.
With some very the animation is of course is anime-esque style, and I don't have a grasp on the story because I'm just starting, and it's kind of the similar story that most of these games have. There is a made up land or area that has some sort of calamity has befallen them, so you're kind of I don't want to say restoring anything, but your character seems to be not exactly a priestess, but the same type of like job is what she does, and she goes around to essentially send the dead to the afterlife, or at least have their soul rest. She cleans up their soul, because if they don't, then they'll come back as kind of a wraith of some sort, and so you'll have to fight them. And that's what I've gotten so far. The gameplay is fairly standard for a like Metroidvania type game, although I do feel that it's, I don't want to say limiting, but most games that I've played recently, such as like Dead Cells or Moon Scars or even Blasphemous, has some sort of dodge or parry mechanic. And this game, you do have a dodge mechanic. However, you can only dodge backwards. And so you can't dodge through enemies because you will take damage. You will hit them, which makes sense. And, when you're on a 2D plane, if it was a 3D plane, then you can dodge around people. That makes sense. But from a 2D plane standpoint, you can't roll past somebody. At least visually, because the way it seems you just run into them. But so it's taken a little bit of getting used to, because normally I could be more aggressive when I play these types of games. But this one, I do have to be a little more conservative when it comes to reading attacks and backing away from them. And I need to get a grip on the skill tree system. There are items that I get that tell me that I gain talent points, which if you played any sort of game with a tree or a talent pool of some sort, you will apply those points to what you want to upgrade, right? Or at least that's how I...
Yeah, I think you're correct.
Yeah. Well, I was looking for an agreement from the crowd. But in this one, I have gained a lot of talent points, but when I go to my talent tree, none of them are there. I can't use them to... Visually, I can't use the points to upgrade abilities. The points are used to unlock parts of the tree, and you can't upgrade the abilities that you get until you hit certain levels, which some of the starter parts of the tree are a very high level, are locked behind very high levels. So one of the earliest ones, I have to be at least level 50 for it to to let me like upgrade it or for it to be upgraded, and I'm not even level 7 at the moment. So I find it very confusing. They didn't specifically state how to work the tree. They just kind of gave it to me.
So how do you level up a skill then? Because if you unlock you don't know. Interesting.
No,
okay. That is that is
so,
weird. That is interesting. Okay.
And so there is when I was going through the tree, and I tried to look it up myself. When I was going through the tree, it said, like on the bottom right, it says 0 out of 10, like 0/10. And I would unlock parts of the tree and the counter would go up. Then it would be like 1 out of 10, 2 out of 10, 3 out of 10. And then it would get to 10 out of 10 and I can't do anything else. But there was no indication of if I had upgraded that thing or gained a new ability. It was just more of the tree was uncovered.
Weird. Seems so like Googling is in order.
Yeah, I probably just have to go back into the like journal or whatever and see if there's like a tutorial of some sort. But yeah, you get items that you can equip or weapons that you can equip. I think there's 5 different types of weapons. So far I've had a scythe, a sword, and a whip. But it's enjoyable so far. It's the backgrounds and the environments are the highlight of the game. The character looks really good as well. However, her animations are extremely choppy. But it lends itself to the art style, so I can overlook that. But one of the first areas that they have you move through, they kind of you drop down a cliff, and it kind of reveals an entire field full of flowers and a lot of foliage growth, and it's very, very beautiful. But so far it seems like it's just going to be a pretty enjoyable standard Metroidvania type game. It's nothing. It's kind of something that I'm playing to pass the time, not necessarily something that I want to get deep into. But that's what I've been playing so far.
Okay. So let's see. So Richard, I've started playing Light Brigade.
Awesome.
Been playing Light Brigade. I like it. I haven't been able to dig into it a whole lot. What I will say is that you have to, at least from what I have played, you have to get past the first boss. And once you get past that, I feel like that is where the game really opens up and you start to put it together more.
Altair, right?
Yeah, the ice. He like throws ice at
guy.
you. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Before that, it's very limited. Like you don't get a whole lot. There's not a whole lot of like maps and stuff. So once you get past, and at first I was like, oh man, is this the entire game? I like it, but I figured, okay, I got to beat this boss though, because I was like, once I beat this boss, I'm assuming because it's a roguelike, different things will happen, and right off the bat, you get past him, and the game opens way up, and the next map is like a sewers map, and they have weird maps that are like.
So, and the maps are sorry to interrupt. The maps are different each time, because I do remember the sewer map, but I didn't get that until maybe like my 4th map. And I haven't got it again since then. It's only
interesting.
Been,
okay.
Yeah, it's only been the mountaintops and kind of a not cavern, but a mountainous I guess a mountainous cavern area. But anyways, go ahead.
Have you fought the boss in the sewers?
No, I died. I got pretty far in the sewers, but I ended up dying to I think I didn't see one of the small creatures, and it ended up getting me. So
yeah, there's like little rats that chase after you.
Yes,
the boss in the sewers is very cool. If you get to the boss in the sewer,
cool?
it's a very cool boss. I'll just say that. Yeah,
awesome.
I liked it a lot.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Are you doing PS5 for that one?
I am. Yeah. So I don't know if you heard last week or no, but I said it in our group chat that I was gifted a PSVR 2 for Christmas. So I've been playing a bunch of different stuff. The other game that I started playing was the Last Clockwinder, which came
I've heard of that one.
In 2022. Last Clockwinder is amazing. It's one of those puzzle games that I knew it got good reviews. I knew it had some press, and I didn't look into it much. It was on sale, so I picked it up. I'm going to say the premise. It's one of those games that I think it's cool to discover. I think that's one of my favorite things about games, but I want to talk about the premise. So Richard, if you want to mute me for a second, you can.
That's all right.
Okay, so the premise of the game is it's a puzzle game,
What the hell?
Spoilers.
I knew you were going to do something like that. It's a puzzle game. And the puzzles are really simple, but at the same time incredibly complex. So basically, it's about growing like fruit, and you have to pick the fruit from a tree. And when you pick the fruit, another fruit grows pretty quickly. And you have to put this fruit in a bin, right? But you have to automate the process so it goes really, really fast, because you have to get part of your job is to like take fruit and make juice and squeeze it and stuff. And then once you get so much, you unlock other things. So you have to pick and harvest a lot of fruit to do this, right? So you have to automate the process. So what you do is you record yourself doing an action, right? So let's say that on one side of the room is the tree with the fruit on it. On the other side of the room is the bin you have to put the fruit in for it to count it as juice or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So when you record yourself, your recording doesn't move. So basically what you have to do is record yourself doing an action. You pick the fruit off the tree, and then you toss it. You toss the fruit, right? Mm-hmm. The fruit doesn't make it to the basket. It's fine. So then you step away. There's just a recording of you picking a fruit off the tree and throwing it. When fruit hits the ground, it just disappears. So it's never ending. There's a copy of you that picks the fruit. A little robot appears where you were after you recorded your own movements. It picks the fruit off the tree and throws it. And then you go to the other side of the room. You record yourself catching the fruit that you threw and putting it in the bin, right? And then you save that recording, and you have two recordings of yourself, one that's throwing the fruit, other one that's catching it, putting it in the bin, like that. And you get into these really complex scenarios where you're like tossing different things across rooms at each other, and you've got like multiple copies of yourself doing different things. I have in one of the first puzzles, I have two trees right next. So they're like dragon fruit or apples or something. I'm not even sure what it is that you're pulling. But anyway, so I have a recording where I grab two trees, I pick the fruit off two trees, toss it, right? And then I have a recording of myself in the middle, catches it, and then I turn and toss it again. And then I have another of myself near the bin that catches those and puts it in the bin. So I have this chain of like recordings of myself. It is so freaking cool. It blew my mind when I first saw it, and it's one of those things where just playing with the mechanic of recording yourself doing something in VR and then stepping away and looking at it is really neat. And when you get into like really complex puzzles and you're figuring out how to make it more efficient, it really is like satisfactory, but instead of you building a machine that does the processing, you record yourself doing all the processing, and then you make it as efficient as possible.
You are the machine.
You are the machine.
What if the real machines are the friends we made along the way?
Yes. What was that, Richard?
I had that too. I said, now you got to rage against it.
A really cool premise. I'm so glad I finally got around to it. I was having so much fun. I recorded a bunch of robots in succession doing the Alan Wake dance for fun. I highly recommend it if you have a VR headset. And the soundtrack is great. The soundtrack is dynamic, so as you... They call them... in the game, they call them clones. As you create more clones, the music picks up, right? Which is amazing, because if you have two clones doing something, the music's fairly mellow. Once you get to like 4, the music's starting to pick up a bit. Then you get to like 10 clones, and the music's like really going as all this stuff is happening around you. It's so freaking cool. So if you know about the game, it's not breaking news. But if you don't, or if you've heard of it like me but didn't really know, highly recommend it. I even got a little bit of motion sickness because you have to because you're turning and throwing stuff. So it's like you have to turn and catch and then look the other way and throw. And but coming up with all that on my own was so much fun. Go ahead, Richard.
It seems like you have to be quick about it in some instances.
Yeah, because you have to time things right. So yeah, and you have to be accurate with your throws. Because if you throw one of the fruits or whatever toward the bin, you have to get it close enough where you can stand there and catch it, because when you're recording yourself, you can't move. You can only just move your hands. So it's really cool.
And that's the really my biggest problem with VR is the throwing mechanics vary so wildly between each game.
They do.
that I can never throw correctly.
They do
in any VR game. So
the nice thing about the last clock winder is that there's no like, you're not in a hurry. So you can sort of take your time, and then as I said, every time if you miss your throw, it just disappears and a new one appears. Mm-hmm. So it's total trial and error. There's no like limited. You're not going to run out of anything. So you can sit there and kind of get used to the mechanics of it. It's funny that you mentioned throwing, because one game where the throwing is very bad is Resident Evil 8 VR. Resident Evil 8 VR is amazing. It's very good. But yes, the throwing in Resident Evil 8 VR is not good. I never figured out how to throw a grenade because like sometimes, because the grenades I would use, what I would use grenades for is if I'm running away from a group of enemies. So I just like drop a grenade behind me and keep going, right?
Oh, right. Yeah.
But even if you do like a slight toss, it just drops the grenade at Ethan's feet as it's lit. It's like, and I don't know if you can hurt yourself with your own grenade or not. I don't remember, but so many times in Resident Evil 8 VR, I would try and like underhand a grenade. And as I would go through the motion and as I would let go of the trigger, the grenade would just suspend in midair and fall straight to the ground. Like instead of following through with momentum. So I was like, shit. I have to like run backward. Resident Evil 8 VR is very good. I'm more excited for Resident Evil 4 because Resident Evil 8 is very good. It's a very good game, but 4 is Resident Evil 4. What can you do? But Resident Evil 8 VR is also a little rough in the sense that there are I don't know, how do I like it this isn't a criticism, it's going to sound like one, but it almost reminds me of a mod, because a lot of problems with Resident Evil 8, they kind of just brute forced. So, and I think I talked about this last week, but because it's a first person game, a lot of the cutscenes and stuff you see from Ethan's perspective. So Lady Dimitrescu picks Ethan up and you see it all first person, right? Or there are cutscenes where Ethan is walking and looking at something. All those cutscenes just play in VR and you're the camera. And for some people, that's like motion sickness hell. If the camera is moving and there's nothing you can do about like which direction it's going or whatever, as opposed to something like Resident Evil 4, at least the first VR remake, that's exclusive for the Oculus. All those cutscenes play out on a little TV, and I think that's easier to do because the game was initially third person, right? So you don't have to remake all those cutscenes. I don't know do you know how they did that with the third person mode in RE8? Did they?
I only seen clips of it, but I mean, they kind of pretty much like pull the camera back and Ethan's just there, third person style. I haven't seen anything else but just small clips. Okay,
interesting. But anyway, it's very good. Ethan is just the dumbest character. Oh my god, he made me laugh so many times. There were a couple hits.
He's only got one thing on his mind.
He's only got one thing. What were some of my favorite things? And one of my favorite things was when you first get to the village, and you fall into like a pit in a house's basement or something, and there's like a bunch of dead bodies, and Ethan just goes, "A dead body?" It's like, Ethan, you're surrounded by dead bodies. Like, what? I don't know.
He's looking at one. He doesn't have object permanence. So as soon as he focused in, all the others disappeared.
And then there's the beginning of Resident Evil 8 is so bad shit crazy, because you get the Resident Evil 4 opening where all the Lycans are coming after you, and it's just survive, which is very cool. Then you finally make it to this house with all these different characters, and all these characters are so distinct, right? There's the guy that's angry. There's the woman who's crying. There's the guy who has like a patch on his eye and he's got a cane. There's the old man who's hurt and his daughter. And then there's like the lady of the house, and they're all very distinct. And it's leading you to believe, hey, you're going to know these people. Like, this is going to be something that happens where you come back to this house and these are the characters you interact with. And then 5 seconds later, everybody dies, the house is on fire, and Ethan goes, why does everybody keep dying? And it's so, I don't think it's meant to be funny, but it's just so bad shit crazy at the beginning of the game that it's hard not to just laugh at it. But man, the beginning of that game is so much fun. Replaying it in VR is definitely worth it. The one downside is that you don't get any of your progress if you already finished the game. None of that carries over. As opposed to RE8.
Yeah, they treat it
RE4
as pretty much a new game.
Yeah.
Like is how they do it, yeah.
But as far as I understand it, RE4, your progress carries over. Another weird thing about RE8, you can throw your knife. You couldn't throw your knife, right?
Right, you could not. No.
Well, in RE8, you can. And that's interesting because I did not do any of those like goats because I wanted to conserve ammunition. So I didn't shoot them. I was like, whatever. Right. I'll leave it to Richard to get all the achievements. I'm not going to shoot the goats. But I learned that you could toss the knife and I was like, hell yeah. So every time I saw a goat, I was tossing my knife and hitting the goats. Tossing a knife.
But you can't throw anything in Resident Evil 8. The mechanics are terrible.
No, the knife throwing is fine. The grenade throwing doesn't make any sense. Because you can't you can underhand the knife and it flies perfectly. If you underhand the grenade, Ethan's just, I guess I'll die. And I don't know why. And I don't know why it's
why
like
can't
that.
I hold these grenades? Yeah.
Exactly. Oh man, and then dude, oh my god, at the end of Resident Evil 8, when it goes high speed, low drag, and you're playing as Redfield, and you've got
Chris, yeah,
dude, that in VR, I could play that section over and over again. I nerded out a little bit because like you go into this village and all these Vikings and you've got this nice, Chris is carrying like an AK-74U or something, I don't know. But because it's VR, which is amazing, on top of Chris's gun, he has a red dot sight. But I was like, F that, I'm not using the red dot sight. So I tilted the gun because I'm a Navy SEAL and I was shooting the gun at an angle just to following the laser on it. God, that was so much fun. They need to make an entire game like that. We need a high-speed, low-drag Resident Evil where you've got night vision and you've got optics, all the fun.
You know what?
All the stuff, all the hits. Go ahead.
Did they do the Mercenaries mode in VR? Because that's the perfect place to do it.
I don't know.
Looks like I'm gonna check right now.
That'd be amazing. But the ending of that game, when you have all those cool weapons and it's in VR, which means headshots are a lot easier. Oh my God. I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. And I need an entire game like that. I need an entire high speed, low drag Resident Evil where you have all this kick ass gear and you're just cleaning out zombies and lichens and stuff. That'd be amazing. But yeah, other than that, that's pretty much it. I don't know if I'm going to be, I don't know how long I'm going to wait until I start RE4. I kind of want to give it some time, play some other games. I'm still playing through Dead Space, still trying to finish that up. So there's other stuff I want to finish before I start another bad shit crazy Resident Evil game. Did you find the answer, Richard?
It doesn't seem like there is an answer for Resident Evil 8. However, oh, you know what? That's just Mercenaries mode in the Quest version. Don't know about the PS5 version, unfortunately.
Interesting.
Probably not though. If an answer isn't coming up immediately.
Yeah. Okay. Alrighty. Let's hit the ad. Thanks for listening. If you like our content, please consider subscribing or leaving a like and comment. You can find us at patreon.com/thegamingdiscourse. And our tiers are $2, $4, $7, and $10 and include getting your name in the video credits, early access, and access to our Discord server. Who's this? Chris. It's supposed to be Jim Rome, but it's only 2 words. Okay, so we're talking Valve's new AI policy and a community update. Valve says the content survey developers fill out when they submit games to Steam now includes an AI disclosure section. I'm going to read a part of the blog update, whatever, and it's going to be verbatim straight from it. So for the next few minutes here, quote, the section separates AI usage into 2 categories, and this is what I'm reading straight from the post. Pre-generated. any kind of content created with the help of AI tools during development. Under the Steam distribution agreement, you promise Valve that your game will not include illegal or infringing content and that your game will be consistent with your marketing materials. In our pre-release review, we will evaluate the output of AI-generated content in your game the same way we evaluate all non-AI content, including a check that your game meets those promises. Then the second one is live-generated. Any kind of content created with the help of AI tools while the game is running, in addition to following the same rules as pre-generated AI content. This comes with additional requirement. In the content survey, you'll need to tell us what kind of guardrails you're putting on your AI to ensure it's not generating illegal content. Valve says much of the disclosure will be on the Steam store page for games, although we're not sure exactly how that's going to look. Valve also says they are releasing a new system on Steam that allows players to report illegal content in games with live-generated content. Valve says that with this new policy, they currently cannot allow adult-only sexual content that is generated with live-generated AI, that is created with live-generated AI. But I don't think they specified why that is. But I assume it's not happy stuff. Okay, so what do we think about this? Valve, Steam's one of the biggest, is the single biggest distributor of PC games in the world. AI is coming, and they're...
Well, it's not coming, it's here.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, it's here.
Yeah.
And, okay, so what do we think? Do we have any...
It's good that they are taking some stances towards usage of AI in video games. Even if it's very gray to what they're saying, like they're not taking a very hard stance on any of it. It's going to be a very much in the air, case by case basis, which understandable. I don't think this is going to create any more, shovelware that isn't already just asset flip games that are thrown onto Steam for 99 cents.
You don't think it could be any worse?
No.
Yeah, dude, I think it could. I never underestimate the depths of human depravity, so I don't know if if I share your optimism there. On one hand,
I'm not saying it's going to be good.
Sure,
I'm not saying they're going to be making good content with AI. Yeah. I'm just saying asset flips are already digging underneath the barrel.
Yeah,
and AI is going to be the same thing.
Well,
at least the lowest form of AI-generated games.
Steam, to me, does not have a fantastic history of content moderation. And I think that's partially due to their libertarian sort of philosophy when it comes to handling things. Right. We know Gabe Newell is not a fan of The Sopranos, and he thinks it's a bad show. So that should tell you everything you need to know about where their content moderation philosophy ranks when it comes to philosophy. No, I'm partially kidding here, but
on the 25th anniversary of Sopranos, we need to bring this opinion back from Gabe Newell. He needs to be canceled.
Exactly. Thank you. Wait, has that 25th not already happened? Is that what next year? Doesn't matter.
No,
God.
It's this year. It's this year.
Okay, is it this year?
But,
okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not up with The Sopranos. I've only seen bits and pieces, actually.
Yeah, this year is the 25th. Anyway,
okay. Thank you. So it's not that I don't know how you would do it. I don't know what the solution is. I also don't know. I don't think Valve is necessarily. I don't think I like Valve's solution, because I think the solution needs to be a little more rigid. And part of making that judgment, I think, is declaring that AI generation, while I'm sure there are ethical ways to use it in game development and in creation, I think we got to put brakes on it for a second. Much like cryptocurrency and NFTs, I think new technologies like this are being pushed so quickly because people have investments in it. Not because it's necessarily fixing anything or or really making anything better. It's solving problems of we don't want to pay people, or how do I don't know, and that's all besides the fact that like image generation already has tons of issues with copyright because those systems are being fed images from the internet, and that's what they're being that's how they're creating things, and there's a huge copyright lawsuit going down with, I think, well, there's like a bajillion of them with ChatGPT, I think, and like the New York Times just recently sued them. So, but that's text, not necessarily image generation, but it's sort of a similar concept principle, I guess. But the point I'm trying to make here is, I think if you were to make a more rigid stance, that would mean you have a more rigid stance against AI, which would mean a philosophy of we don't like this as much, which they made that stance with NFTs. So with AI, they have decided against that. And I don't know, that makes me a little uneasy because it's already difficult for good games to find their way on Steam and stuff like that. And just opening that up for more never seems good. And yeah. Richard, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, I have some worry, particularly about the evaluation of the output that the AI like content has in the game, because we already know that like the biggest thing I have seen when it comes to AI, particularly on my feed on Twitter, is that like humans are spotting the problems that AI is producing, which is great and all, but there will be a certain amount of time to when Steam, or even just immediately, that Steam will start to use the amount of AI things being generated is going to catch up to the amount of work that humans can do. So they're going to switch to an algorithm to find AI itself. But what's going to happen when like that algorithm starts slipping up and can't catch the AI? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it's an event horizon.
Right.
What's the term for singularity? It's a singularity, right?
Right.
At a pace of something, yeah.
Right. So it's like, this is, I'm not going to use the phrase an empty promise, but this is a pretty big like problem that will overtake the solution. So that's a little worrisome. But it's just unfortunate to kind of there are really great examples I've seen used for AI, and one of which was like the finals. The finals uses AI. Their announcers, the two voices they have for their announcers, are supplemented by AI, which when I'm playing, I particularly don't notice it. And I think it sounds fairly natural. But if it's okay from those voice actors to use some of their voice, they recorded some voices, and I think AI filled out a lot more of the rest. I think it can be supplemental in that instance. I don't know how you'd feel about it, but one thing that could benefit from it would be like sports games. Sports games, MLB and Madden have so many lines that can be recorded from the commentators that AI could probably help benefit with like different types of situations that happen on the field, so that they don't have to record so many AI lines. But I know that in itself is an issue with payment and all of that. So it's just one big like mucky mess that you can't clean up, and it's only going to get worse, and you can't like refine it to only be taken advantage of in these certain situations. It's going to get out of hand real quick, and only time will tell, just as Connor said, all of the 99-cent shovelware games, there's going to be a ton of those types of AI games that are going to be out there, and we'll see some that become, huge sellers or be memeified, but this is where we live now. So we'll see if Steam can wrangle it, but I have low expectations for that.
Yeah, the other thing that I think is a little that I'm not a huge fan of is I don't think Valve was the thing about players able to report illegal content games with live generated content, right? That's a bit of a red flag to me, because now you're putting the onus on users to do content moderation.
Right.
Now, I don't know if Valve may have been looking at it as like, we'll make this convenience for things that slip through the cracks. That may be what they're thinking, as opposed to, here's another major backstop we're going to put. We're going to hope that our user base is going to, do all this stuff to find things that we don't catch, right?
Well,
right.
It's going to be a little bit harder because that's for live generated rather than pre-generated.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's going to be stuff that happens in the game in the moment, and that's going to be harder for Steam to catch, because they're not stress testing these games before they put them out on their platform.
Well, yes, but I would hope yes, you're correct. But I don't know. I don't want to speak in generalities too much, because what systems do you have in place to make sure that a generative AI that makes stuff real time, what stuff do you have in place to make sure it's not making illegal stuff? And how robust is that? And
that's what they're putting on the onus on the developers, is they have to say what they're doing.
Yes.
And again, what they've said they're doing isn't black and white. They're not laying out exactly what they're doing. So we don't know what the process of, is it enough to pass through this disclosure agreement or not is. So
yeah, I guess just color me skeptical. I don't know. And maybe that's wrong. Maybe it's wrong with me. Maybe I'm just wrong. I just don't know if it's enough. And I don't know if I trust people on the internet with something as manipulative and strong as AI. And again, I think there are probably ethical uses for it, but the people that are, I think the massive amount of investment and where we see other sectors of technology, how technology is used, I don't think ethical use is something that those investments are necessarily looking for, right? It wasn't with crypto. It wasn't with NFTs. It's not with like apps like Uber and Grubhub and stuff, right? That's not about making work better and making jobs better. It's about making contracted, independent contractors that don't fall under certain labor laws that companies can then exploit and shit like that. So it's not about making the world a better place or making things easier. It's just about trying to get around certain things. And we'll get into the SAG-AFTRA thing in a second, but yeah. So I guess I don't know. I would rather it be a slow thing, but with hands off and sort of a vague Valve approach. I'm afraid that's what isn't going to happen, and instead you're going to have a ton of bullshit that just drops out of nowhere, and that saturates not only the market for things that may be ethical uses of AI, but also just games in general, right? And that won't be good. Okay, can we move on to the next thing real quick? The other AI story. Okay, so SAG-AFTRA made an agreement with Replica, which is an AI voice replication company, I guess. In short, the deal allows SAG-AFTRA members to work with Replica, which would make recreations of actors' voices and then license those recreations. This is separate from the Interactive Media Agreement, which is a union contract that SAG-AFTRA is currently negotiating. Companies involved in that negotiation are Take-Two and EA. I believe the deal with Replica and SAG-AFTRA has been set for 1 year, and that after that year is up, they'll be able to go back and amend things. If I understood the announcement correctly. In SAG-AFTRA's FAQ, the union says that other companies are already doing this technology and setting terms below union standards, sometimes even exploitative terms. And so their reasoning behind it is, we're going to set up a deal with this one company. That way, if you get offers to do this, you have one company that is at least working under our terms, as opposed to all these other companies that have the more exploitative terms or whatever. There has been lots of negative reaction. Chris Hackney, who is Rauru, I can't pronounce that name, and Tears of the Kingdom, and Rusty, I can pronounce Rusty, and Armored Core 6 retweeted SAG-AFTRA's announcement saying, quote, "I want to act. I do not want to sell someone my likeness to use and then pay me. It defeats the purpose of art and performance when neither art is created nor do I perform. Once again, I do not and will never give consent to be used for AI in any way, shape, or form," end quote. Okay. So again, this deal, there's a lot up in the air. I don't know. And part of me, I guess, that is resistant to AI doesn't like the idea that we take a human element out of the equation of things that are created, right? So, so a voice actor that licenses their lines and sends them, or licenses their voice and sends it to a company, and then that company puts a voice in a game, and that voice is generated via AI. That's not human. That's just a fake voice. And I think that's different from like what the Cyberpunk example, where a voice actor was brought in, recorded lines, and then AI changed that voice actor's voice to sound more like the actor that passed away who played Doc, the doctor, I forget his name. That's different because you're at least hiring an actor. You at least have some kind of, and I don't know how different that is from, say, bringing in a voice actor to do monster lines, and then you go into Audacity and make it all weird and sound right because you're just using an audio program. I don't know how many degrees of separation there are between that and having an AI program assist you doing it. I don't know. But I guess that's part of my hesitation, is taking out the human aspect of it. And then it's like, well, I don't know, what are you really listening to? It reminds me of like back in the day when there would be, I don't know, like like The Rock in The Mummy, the Scorpion King, where it's like, okay, I guess it's The Rock, but it's just CGI Rock, so it's not even like
it's a blob.
Yeah, it's like it's not even The Rock.
Worse than claymation.
Yeah, it's just CGI.
Yes.
So it's like, it wasn't really a performance. It was just like I don't know. It was just bad animation, I guess. So you're just so again, I'm getting twisted up here. What do you guys think? I'm sorry.
The most disappointing thing about this here, and since the SAG-AFTRA strikes last year that concluded recently, is that by and large, all of the folks that I follow that do voice work or are voice actors, when it comes to this particular instance or concern, have been almost 100% like ignored by SAG-AFTRA themselves. And this deal seems to have been made without any input from voice actors, largely themselves. When it was announced that this happened, pretty much a large majority of quite popular voice actors were kind of dumbfounded and taken aback by this agreement or this vote, because apparently a lot of them have had no say in it. So even then, this situation here, this deal, is something that I already from the outset have had a negative viewpoint of, just because of the fact that a lot of the folks who make our games, much like Chris Hackney and others, in general, were not even made aware of. So it sucks that the people who have this job seemingly don't get a say in it, And it sucks that they don't get to decide when and how their voice is used. I mean, they obviously do. They have to sign the contract. But they aren't going
so I mean, they can just entirely opt out.
Right, of course.
And then Replica can't use their voice. And again, it's not SAG-AFTRA saying everyone in the union is now agreeing to this. It's SAG-AFTRA saying, hey, this is the company that is agreeing to our terms.
I can see both sides of the argument. Because SAG-AFTRA says, as I said, that they say companies are already doing this, so we're going to make a deal with one. There's a lot of corporate speak. They say this is a groundbreaking blah blah blah. Yeah. It sounds very PR. So I could see that argument. I could also see the argument just from an actor standpoint of this is how I make a living. I don't want the foot of AI to get in the door at all. I don't want a single toe, right? Because once that foot is there, that opens the door and that creeps it open for all kinds of stuff to try and seep in. And so I could see the argument that I want my union to be a blockade against that. I don't want it to be in at all. I can definitely see both sides, and I tend to side with the actors in that just because I don't trust where generative AI is coming from and stuff like that.
I get that, but it is better to have this in place than to not have it.
Okay.
And that's just how technology progresses. If you wait too long, then technology will surpass any checks you can put in place, and you'll have to deal with the outcomes of not taking a stance earlier.
Sure. Yeah.
And I don't think, like, with it being an opt-in situation where it's SAG-AFTRA saying this is the company that we would prefer you guys work with because they're the ones that are agreeing to our deal. I don't think this is going to affect your Laura Baileys, your Nolan Norths, Matt Mercers, because they're still going to be, companies are still going to want them to come in and do voice lines and to be characters, because there's still that credibility of we're getting this person to come in. I feel this is going to be more towards like it's going to be more in line with like voice actors that do a lot of like line work for like minor roles in Bethesda games, where it's like, here's 8 million roles or lines for you to read, and now I'm donating my voice, they just have it generated for them, and I get the paycheck for that.
I don't know. But again, that could be the reason for it.
Mm-hmm.
Something about that feels icky to me, just because it might as well be it's just a sexier text to speech at that point. It's Siri at that point, essentially. It's just you're telling.
That's what it is,
and that sucks. I mean, I don't want my games to be narrated by Siri. I would rather, because that's not human, right? Like that. I don't care. One thing that I didn't like about reading this agreement, and this may be standard in the industry, I have no idea, but it delineated between atmospheric voices and like narrative voices. And so it's like, if you're an atmospheric voice and you get paid less, and I understand that you can't pay everybody $1 million a session, so whatever, I understand that. But at the same time, I think about how many small roles in a video game are famous or are just impactful. How many little tiny lines from like the Kolskola brothers in Alan Wake 2, right? I guess they had a lot of lines, but they weren't main characters, right? But they were phenomenal, and it was just a little bit of lines here and there. I took an arrow to the knee, right? Like that was an actual guy saying that line. I think actors put it doesn't matter how small the line is or how atmospheric the role is supposed to be. They put real effort into that, and they get trained. They go to acting school. And so it's not just a guy off the street saying a thing. It's like, maybe sometimes it is, but it's like they have real methods that they put into. So there's so much craft and schooling and work that goes into that. I don't like the idea that we take all that away for the convenience of having a computer generate it. And again, is there an ethical way to do that? Maybe. If you can get Gus Johnson in NFL Madden 27 screaming and it's all AI and it reacts to whatever players on, I don't know, whatever, I guess. What about like in NFL games? What about numbers? Because if you go and you play an NFL game now, it's like they say all the numbers, and then if you get to like the 100s, I don't know about the most recent ones, but if you score 150 points, it's 150. If you score 200, 250, right? Because you can tell they recorded all the 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 99, and then they recorded 100, 200, 300, right? Even though who's going to score 300 points, I don't know. So could you have AI go 150 instead of 150, right? Or when you name a player, that's 97 passing yards for Dak Prescott today, as opposed to that's 97 yards for Dak Prescott, where it's like, if you could have an AI do that, is that ethical? Maybe, because you can't have Kirk Herbstreit or whatever, Joel Klatt. I can only think of college color commentators right now for some reason. Greg Olson there. You can't have Greg Olson say that's 1 yard for Dak Prescott. That's 2 yards. Like that'd be a billion lines. So maybe but back to my original point. So it's like by SAG-AFTRA making this deal, I think what upsets a lot of people is that it puts in place an idea that, I don't know, it like facilitates it. Now this is official. Now there's an official deal in the works, and this is okay. When maybe we should be having the conversation if it's okay in the first place. SAG-AFTRA, there is what's the term? Procedural. There is a procedural reason that SAG-AFTRA members didn't get to vote on this, and it says in the agreement or in the FAQ, I think it has to do with like because it's with one company as opposed to like a collective bargain across the entire union or something, and because of that, only the board has to vote on it or gets to vote on it as opposed to like all members or whatever. But it's such a big deal that I think members would have rather voted on it because they don't want that in. They don't want it there at all. I think to them, it is better that the union says no to all that stuff, even if the technology comes, because it's better just to stave it off, right?
And it's not if the technology comes. The technology is here.
And to them,
it is too late to start having conversations. You need to start having conversations 5 years ago.
Well, I think that's unfair. I think it's unfair to tell a bunch of people that are in a union, sorry, 5 years ago, we should have talked about something that wasn't around. I think that's unfair. I don't know, especially with something this monumental.
Well, then if that's how the majority feel about the leadership of their union, they need to change that. And because sitting around and having discussions and conversations and drawing it out longer while the technology is here and advancing only puts you further and further behind and puts you on a worse position. You have to start acting now. You can't start having these conversations now. You've had to have these conversations. And it's unfortunate that they haven't. And it's unfortunate that the technology is already here. But that doesn't change any of the facts that they need to start acting now.
Okay,
they can't wait any longer.
But why not? Let me put it to you a different way. Okay,
go ahead.
So let's because I don't know how SAG-AFTRA works, right? I understand. Like I know how why there are minimum wages, right? And like if you're a member of a union, and you get paid $100 an hour to do a job, you cannot accept $50 an hour. And that's not because they don't want you to get paid. It's because if you start accepting $50 an hour, then a bunch of asshole companies are going to start charging $50 an hour because they're going to see a break in the dam, and then they're going to try and make it there. So you say, if you're part of this union, you can only accept $100 an hour. That's the minimum you can make, right? Or that's the minimum you can accept. And that's a part of like managing the market, right? So how does this work with like technologies? Is it similar? I don't know.
Yes, this is a baseline.
So is it, I guess from the actor's perspective, like not accepting lesser money, could you say a baseline is we're not going to work with AI until we get this larger interactive media agreement in? Once we get that in, which everyone votes on, then we'll have a baseline of what our position is on AI. But instead we have this smaller agreement that yes, the technology is already here, but it's not something that we all agreed on, right? So it's like if we had a $100 baseline for money you could make, and then like, okay, except for this one instance where you can make $75. And it's like, well, what? Hold on.
There isn't a baseline. Now there is.
But no, but the interactive media agreement is going to be the larger thing that everybody votes on.
And now it has to meet or exceed these standards.
Okay, I don't know enough about the union to know if the deal that they make with multiple companies, how much it has to do, because I'm assuming it's going to cover more topics than just voice replication. So I don't know. So I don't want to talk too out of my depth.
Voice replication. This is going to should be. I can't speak for the board or the union, but it should be what their baseline is here's where we're starting. The conversations now can take place because now we have a foot in the race. We're here now. We're set in, like, we have something set in stone. Now we can start negotiating. Because if you don't have anything set in stone and you're waiting for this larger one to take place, how long is that going to take?
Well, I don't know, but isn't that the point of collective bargaining? Is that you get these big things that it's collective bargaining. Like, you get this big thing that everybody votes on, and everybody's not going to agree on it, but you at least vote on it. There's a process, as opposed to only the executive, and only like
again,
the board.
We don't know the exact bylaws of SAG-AFTRA.
Well, so. I do know that this agreement again was able to go through and it's only with one company. So it's like, this does not mean that if you're a SAG-AFTRA member, you can only work with this one company. It's just, I think almost in some ways it's symbolic, in a sense. But anyway, I don't want to get too out of my depth. But Richard, is there anything you wanted to add? Did you want to yell at me or anything? Sorry.
No, I have a very surface level knowledge of this stuff, so I can only say so much before, I don't want to say any more. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I we're not experts either. I'm just coming at it as I come at the whole AI thing as just skeptical, because I don't think, like with cryptocurrency, I think cryptocurrency is an interesting idea because banks suck, capitalism sucks, and throughout all of human history, no one has ever done a good job managing the economy. No one, not a single person, okay? There's always been people that fucked it up, that were greedy, that made it suck, whatever, right? And so the idea of crypto was like, hey, fuck the banks, let's do this. And I think there's a grain of like, hey, that's not a bad idea. But there's so much other bullshit around that it's just, well, then all you're doing is just taking money from banks.
It's just new capitalism plus.
It's just a different bank. It has all the bad things that happen in a bank, except it's happening on some nerd's fucking GPU, as opposed to somewhere at Merrill Lynch or something, right?
Merrill Lynch's GPU.
Yeah, instead of at Merrill Lynch's GPU, it's like Vivek Batalam or whatever, the guy that made the Ethereum coin. It's on like his GPU. So it's like, it's the same thing. It's just a different paradigm, right? So it's like that grain of like, hey, it's kind of a good idea has been warped into, it's just the same bullshit with a different name. And Elon Musk talks about it a lot. So it's like with AI, it's kind of a cool idea that you can generate things, you can use tools to help you code and stuff like that. But I'm afraid that it's just going, that small grain is just becoming, how do we pay actors less? How do we make games cost less, or how do we reduce costs on games by getting rid of staff? How do we generate more skins for Fortnite characters, but have fewer artists, right? And that's the kind of thing that scares me. That's the kind of world that terrifies me, because then it's just nonsense. It's just computers generating random things, and we're attaching random values to things, to just creating artificial scarcity and bullshit like that. And that's just scary. The other thing about this is I do wonder if, like, so you're licensing your voice out to companies, and it's like, why can't that company just use an actor? So let's say your guess is there's the GTA 6 police officers.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to generate all the police officers. They don't say anything. They just shoot. But let's pretend that that was supposed to be a cop joke. I'm sorry. Let's just say that you're generating a bunch of like, get down, hands up, whatever, right? Okay. Why not hire actors to do that? Okay, you got the likeness, but why not hire an actor that doesn't have the job, that can record it? I don't know. Like, why not? And then they can put their human voice there, as opposed to hiring a likeness that then it just seems like a weird.
That really just
middleman.
That really
right?
just comes down to, I guess, style. Like, why make 2D platformers when you can make full 3D games? It's style. It's what the different complexities are of, like, what the different capabilities are of the development team. Is like, I could see this being very useful for like not shovelware games, but like single person developed games that may not have the capital to start hiring voice actors at their rates, but may be able to find a deal through Replica to still get voice work.
And that's the grains that I don't think are necessarily crazy. Smaller games being able to do things, but is that where this is going to stop as a supplement to people that are struggling?
No,
to
and
make
that's
games
why they're setting a baseline with this company and doing large collective bargaining that are going to set larger standards for bigger companies.
Okay. Cool. Richard, is there anything else you would like to say?
No.
Do you have tidbits?
I do have tidbits, yes.
Yay! Play the tidbit sounder. What if I told you, in this world, there are bits, and there are tids, and Richard is the only man who can put them together into tidbits. Okay, sorry, I forgot. Richard can't hear the sounder. The sounder's gone now, Richard. I apologize.
I assumed that that was going to be added later. So anyways, very difficult to do remote stuff. I do have a lot of little fun stuff here, so these are going to be quick. A little bit of preservation news. I always like to have one of those at least. There's a game called Stardust 5 that has been preserved from the group Gaming Alexandria over on Twitter. Stardust 5 was a game made by Hisanori Takeuchi that belonged to the Famicom Basic series, and it is a type-in program. Basically, it's a user's. So the Famicom had an attachment that basically turned it into a little miniature computer. So people who learned BASIC could program some things on it. Users would have to type in commands using the codes given, and of course, you get a game. There were a collection of titles available, and they were printed in old gaming magazines. But that's the only way you can get them, because they weren't released on a physical thing. You would just type them in. It would create the game there. Gaming Alexandria has found and purchased one of the magazines containing this specific game. So as long as you put in that basic code, you would get this game loaded up on your Famicom, which is very neat.
Good for them.
Yeah, very good. And beyond the preservation news, a couple of secrets have hit several games, or a couple games in the last couple of weeks. These are the two examples I have. A code for the game Clockwork Knight 2 on the Sega Saturn has essentially revealed that you can unlock a fully playable version of the first game on the same disc. For some reason, this code has been hidden for the last 29 years. Strangely enough, though, the entire first game can be accessed on the Japanese version of Clockwork Knight 2. But for the American version, it was not accessible. Word spread in different publications and internal discussions on the early web that the first game would be included on the second game, and it was assumed that it would be unlocked after you beat the game, or if you input a code. However, when the game came out, nobody had found anything. The former option yielded no results, and the latter option was never revealed until somebody found it quite recently, within the last 2 weeks. So Even though it was advertised in certain publications, you'd get the first game that never happened for some reason until obviously the code was found. So that's neat.
That is neat. I wonder if anybody accidentally discovered it and just didn't know. Some like 6-year-old kid was like, "Oh, look at this."
Oh yeah, I'm sure that's where some Mandela effects come from. I'm pretty certain.
Oh, interesting theory. Huh. Okay.
Yeah. About video games, not necessarily about other things.
I was gonna say most Mandela effects are just people being, ignorant and misremembering things, and then being like, "That's got to be something else. I can't be at fault here."
The human brain isn't fallible with it. Anyways, so this one is really interesting and infuriating for me, for my job. So about 2 weeks ago, a developer from the defunct gaming developer Argonauts Games, Martin Piper, appeared in an interview with Modern Vintage Gamer over on YouTube and revealed that he had placed a cheat code inside of the PS1 game Alien Resurrection, based off the movie, that would essentially bypass the security checks of the PlayStation console and allow any burned game to be played on the system with no mod chip or modification of any kind.
What?
So Piper stated that he was trying to see if you could switch, when they were developing the game, he was just curious about the functionality of the PS1, and he tried to see if you could switch discs on a PS1 without having to turn the console off. And you couldn't, so unless you developed this code, and so he developed this code, and he essentially revealed it on this YouTube interview because he said after 20 some years, who would give a shit? Well, the cause was simply experimental, and the effect, in the last 2 weeks, Alien Resurrection has now ballooned from a game that was worth about $30 to now about $200.
Oh, wow. So, okay, interesting.
Now, so I have to deal with that.
Question.
Yeah.
Didn't you switch discs in Metal Gear Solid?
So you did switch discs in Metal Gear Solid, yeah. And a lot of other games, usually there would be, I don't know much about game development, but usually when you get to that point, there would be the direction for you to do that. So I think in the game's coding, there was specifically a trigger for you to do that.
Yeah.
This is a manual trigger, but for I think those games, it was a trigger where you had to get to that moment. You just couldn't do it. Does that make sense?
I think so, yes. Because I don't remember turning off the PlayStation and switching the discs with Metal Gear Solid on the PS1. Okay.
So you could, there are different, and it's starting with the PS2. I don't know if the Saturn did this, but starting with the PS2, if you ejected the game, it did have a sensor that would recognize when the disc tray was open. And so you could switch games, but you would have to reset the system for it to recognize that you switched discs.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Does that mean, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. I think I get it. Man, consoles are so much, you forget how weird consoles could be back in the day. And it's nowadays, oh man, suspending games.
They're computers. Yeah, they're computers.
Yeah, and suspending games.
Yeah.
Could you imagine suspending game back in the day? That'd be like wizardry. That'd be
that would blow my mind as a kid for sure. Actually, so a couple fun facts. The original Animal Crossing. This involves Nintendo. The original Animal Crossing on GameCube, you can play without the disc. The game is so small that it runs off of the GameCube's RAM.
Oh my
so if you load up Animal Crossing and get to actually inside of the game, you can open up the tray and take out the disc, and you can just continue to play it until you turn the console off. The same happens with I believe Super Mario All-Stars on the Wii, because it's just a collection of ROMs from the NES or Super Nintendo.
Of course,
it runs just off the RAM, so you can take that disc out and still play it too.
That's awesome. Funny.
It is awesome. It's quite silly too. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse, Patreon.com/The Gaming Discourse. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.